They called you quiet, focused, sensitive, smart, easy to be around. They said you were wise beyond your years. You learned to smile when praised, to shrink when threatened, to avoid conflict before it ever appeared. And you started to believe that this version of yourself, the calm, competent, emotionally contained version, was simply who you were. But what if it wasn't? What if what you call your personality is actually a map of every place your nervous system had to adapt to danger, disappointment, and disconnection? What if your strengths were once survival tactics? What if the traits you've always identified with weren't chosen, but shaped? In Part 1, we explored how our culture has normalized illness, burnout, and emotional numbing. We learned that adaptation isn't failure, it's brilliance under pressure. Today, in Part 2, we go deeper into the question of identity, into the hidden origins of the self you've called me, and into the quiet possibility that who you are might not be who you were meant to be, but who you had to become. When a baby is born, they are biologically wired for connection. They cry so someone comes. They smile so someone stays. Their body, their breath, their biology, everything is calibrated around relationship. But what happens when the caregiver is too overwhelmed to attune? When the world doesn't respond with warmth, but with cold distance? When the cry is met with silence, the need with frustration, the presence with absence? The baby doesn't understand trauma. They don't analyze neglect. They adjust. They turn inward. They detach from the signals of their own body. If crying doesn't bring comfort, they stop crying. If expressing leads to punishment, they learn to suppress. This is not weakness. It's genius. It's a nervous system protecting itself from further injury. And over time, those protections become patterns. Patterns become traits. Traits become identity. And suddenly, you're turned 30, or 40, or even 50. And people describe you with words that once were armor: self-sufficient, emotionally stable, productive, polite. But they don't see that beneath those polished qualities might be a child who never felt safe enough to be messy, to be loud, to be needy, to be real. Gabor Maté calls this the false self, not as a judgment, but as a mirror. It's not fake in the performative sense. It's just not whole. It's the version of you that learned to survive in environments where your true self wasn't welcome. And while this false self may win you praise, success, even love, it can never offer peace, because it was born not from freedom, but from fear. Let's go further. Have you ever been in a relationship where you couldn't tell whether you were loved for who you are, or for how well you played your role? The caregiver, the stable one, the empath. That confusion often starts early, when love is conditional, when good means quiet, when bad means expressive, when attention must be earned by pleasing. And so, you sharpen your skills, you become who they need, and you lose touch with who you are. Maybe you learned that your anger was dangerous, that joy was too loud, that sadness was too much. So you became calm, controlled, capable. Maybe you always knew what others needed and never knew what you needed. That's not personality. That's protection. That's what your nervous system created to make life bearable. But the cost is disconnection from yourself, from others, from joy. It's the quiet loneliness of always performing, even in your own home. It's the tension in your shoulders from holding back tears. It's the way you don't even notice your breath is shallow, your jaw is tight, your heart is racing, because that's just your baseline. Now, here's the turning point. What was wired in survival can be rewired in safety. That's neuroplasticity. That's healing. It starts with awareness, with slowing down, with noticing. Noticing when you override yourself, when you say yes but mean no, when you smile but feel numb, when you help others but resent it deeply. These moments are not flaws. They are invitations. They are the nervous system knocking, saying, "Is it finally safe to be me?" The work is slow, it's tender, it's uncomfortable. You might feel guilt for setting boundaries. You might grieve the years you spent performing. You might feel rage at parents, at culture, at yourself. Let it come. Let it move. Don't stop it with shame, because everything you feel now is part of what you weren't allowed to feel then. And in that permission, a miracle happens. You begin to meet the parts of you that never got to grow. The playful one, the bold one, the soft one, the honest one. Not because you earned it, but because you remembered you were never broken, only fragmented. So, what now? You rebuild from the inside out. You learn to pause before reacting, to check in with your body before saying yes, to breathe into fear instead of fleeing from it, to choose relationships where you are not just useful, but held. It's not about fixing. It's about integrating, because the self that adapted still lives inside you, but so does the self that was buried. And healing is when they meet, when you don't have to choose between being safe and being whole. It takes time, it takes intention, it takes kindness, but it's possible. And every small choice adds up. Every time you say no without apologizing, every time you cry without explaining, every time you rest without earning it, you are telling your body, we are safe now, and the body listens. What if everything you've ever called a flaw, your overthinking, your emotional intensity, your tendency to withdraw or overcommit, wasn't a flaw at all, but a reflection of your earliest attempts to find safety in a world that felt overwhelming or indifferent? What if your perfectionism was once a shield to protect you from rejection? What if your quietness was never about shyness, but about calculating which version of yourself was safest to reveal? Think of how often we confuse strength with suppression. We praise those who push through, who never let things get to them, who don't make it about feelings. But strength without softness becomes armor, and armor eventually becomes a prison. You stop feeling because it hurts. You stop speaking because no one hears. You stop needing because it's safer not to be disappointed. And that's where loneliness begins. Not from being alone, but from being unseen. From walking through life without your real self at the center. From being celebrated for the mask, while your soul withers in silence. That kind of emptiness is hard to name. It doesn't show up in blood tests, but it shows up in late-night scrolling, in burnout cycles, in relationships that never feel quite right, in a life that looks good on paper but feels hollow in your chest. But here's what no one told you. The door back to yourself is still open. It was never locked, only buried beneath expectation, obligation, and years of pretending. Coming home to yourself might feel disorienting at first. You might not recognize your own preferences. You might feel guilty for wanting more. You might fear that if you stop performing, people will leave. And some might. Because when you stop playing the role, the people who loved the performance may feel confused, or disappointed, or threatened. But the people who are meant to walk with you, the ones who want your presence, not just your service, they will stay. And more than that, they will breathe easier in your presence because your authenticity will give them permission to be real too. That's the gift of healing. It ripples. When you choose to meet yourself with honesty, others feel safer doing the same. When you model wholeness, not perfection, but integration, you change the temperature of every room you enter, and slowly, the false selves begin to fall away. Not just yours. Everyone's. Let's take a moment now, not to summarize, but to honor what's unfolding. You are not reading this because you're broken. You are reading this because something in you knows there is more. Something in you is brave enough to question the script you were handed, strong enough to set it down, tender enough to want something deeper. This is not self-help. This is self-return. So start small. Write down a truth you've never spoken. Let yourself cry when the wave comes. Say no when it costs you too much to say yes. Ask for help before the collapse. Tell someone how you actually feel, not the polished version, the real one. Because every time you choose truth over performance, every time you choose rest over hustle, connection over control, softness over suppression, you rewrite what strength means. You become the kind of human this world desperately needs. Rooted, present, alive. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not fixing a broken thing, but remembering a forgotten truth. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were simply unseen. But now, you see yourself. Let's grow slow. Let's root deep. Let's come home. Together.